I think this will also connect a little bit within this cybernetic discussion that it's becoming relevant today, even though it's a discussion that has more than 50 or I mean, if we go back to the initial, the pioneers of cybernetics, it's a discussion of the last 80, 90 years. But this is a paper around a research that I've been doing, which is around a particular person and a particular set of exhibitions that occurred during the late 60s. This is, okay, this is working, yes? Okay. Okay. So during the 60s, Jorge Glusberg created the Center for Art and Communications in Buenos Aires, popularly known as the CAyC, which fostered the intermingling of disciplines with communications and cybernetics at its heart. And Glusberg conceived the CAyC as an interdisciplinary and experimental art center which explored the relationship between art, science, technologies, and social studies, and articulated a vast Latin American network. In one of an early 70s diptych promoting its activities, it mentioned that the center aimed to promote the execution of projects and experiments where art, technological media, and the interests of the community are brought together in an effective exchange that puts in evidence the new unity of art, science, and the social environment in which we live. Its fundamental objectives are to encourage, support, and develop those social tasks, experimental studies, or research in the arts and group communications which give rise to an interdisciplinary integration to improve and expand the current scenario of human concerns. It is formed, I mean the CAyC at itself, it's formed by artists, sociologists, logicians, mathematicians, art critics, and psychologists pursuing common goals with a highlight on the behavior and development of phenomena of mass communication and the collapse of traditional forms of practice, creating an opening for new systems of expression where the researchers and artists try to outline the artistic interests of the man of the 21st century. CAyC showcased internationally a new regional genre of art, which Glusberg defined as systems art, identifying it, of course, with the post-object practices and experiments that were developed at that time in the international scene. I published this as part of a larger initiative that we started in 3-4 years ago, which is it was published as part of a special issue of AI and Society, which is a work on the history of cybernetics in Latin America, and basically I'll give a glimpse of the research that I've been doing around the CAyC and around in general cybernetics in Latin America. Through two initiatives that the CAyC pushed on. One is the first exhibition that they did, Art and Cybernetics, and then in general the initiatives around systems art in Latin America, which was a series of exhibitions. So in the case of art and cybernetics, I mean, it following the Second World War, as we all know, the field of cybernetics gained scientific and intellectual recognition, and there was an outburst in the 60s. There was an outburst of social and artistic interdisciplinary movements and research practices that prompted ephemeral events involving the audience, I mean the observer in this case, in a cybernetic sense, as an active participant and allowing to question their own practice as an impact on and its impact on society. So in the 18th of August 1969, Jorge Glusberg opened the CAyC's first exhibition, Art and Cybernetics, at the Bonino Gallery in Buenos Aires. And it's inspired by a visit that Glusberg did to Japan very early, some months before, where he established contact with the Tokyo Computer Technique Group. And this was a group founded by Masao Komura and Haruki Tsuchiya. And initially, Glusberg thought that it was a good idea to present these works in an exhibition in Buenos Aires. And he brought with him from his trip a series of works from this group. However, Glusberg set up also a research group on arts and cybernetics in Buenos Aires with people from IT engineering, people from the computation center at the Ort School, which were the ones that facilitated the machines, and people from also from science and technology background from the University of Buenos Aires. So he organized a seminar which gave artists access to computers and the chance to explore their creative possibilities. The foundational group was comprised of Argentinian artists, and the seminar included researchers and pioneers that came not just from the arts, but also they have a background in architecture. Particularly, there was a person within the technical group, Ricardo Ferraro, who was in charge of using the IBM 1130, the computing system model 2C, and two automatic machine plotters were the ones that were doing the graphic drawings. And the software at that time mostly was based in Fortran. I mean, that was the main language at that time, especially for the IBM 1130. And the exhibition showcased living art. Here are some of the images, and I can handle here some of. I made some copies of the catalogs. If you would like to take a look at, these are copies of the original catalogs of the Arts and Cybernetics show. So the exhibition showcased living art created by innumerable pioneers. Glusberg mentioned. Who use ideas, synthetic shapes, or mathematical equations instead of paintings, lights and motors, and information instead of brushes. So, from the artists participating in the seminar, which were quite a big number, only Bernie, Benedict, Deira, McIntyre, Romberg, and Vidal exhibited their works. Here are some of the images of those artists, which were based mostly on polynomial interpolations, repetitions, geometric patterns. Glusberg understood that the character of cybernetics was able to emphasize an application in artistic practice which enabled new interpretations that could act as an active force for establishing and understanding human behavior, and furthermore to question and challenge society, in particular, as he later mentioned, as a new form that emerges as a result of a regional problematic, one that uses a methodology common to different contexts. Well, here are some other images of the workshop. During the exhibition and the workshops, it's interesting to mention that there was a particular seminar called On Information and Approach, which, among others, included Manuel Sadowski. Manuel Sadowski was an influential mathematician and computer pioneer who led the implementation of the first computer for research in Argentina, a Ferranti Mercury, nicknamed Clementina, but he also founded the first computer center in Uruguay. So he's quite an influential figure. So the Arts and Cybernetics exhibition, to put it in context, which I think is also interesting, was the first of its kind in Latin America. Took place only 1 year after Cybernetics Serendipity at the CAyC in London, or some more beginnings at the Brooklyn Museum in New York, and it took place the same year as other influential exhibitions like the Machine as seen at the end of the Mechanical Age at the MoMA, Mind Extenders in Minneapolis, or Tendencies 4 at the Gallery of Contemporary Art in Zagreb. And a year before, Information, also at MoMA, or Software, Information Technology, its meaning for art at the Jewish Museum in New York. Based on the information provided directly from Jasia Reichert and her archives, some personal conversations that I had with her, Definitely, cybernetic serendipity was one of Glusberg's main inspirations, that it combined computer-generated graphics and some also computer music, along with some motorized sculptures. Glusberg established correspondence with Reichard since '67, and he asked for the authorization to reproduce the recordings of cybernetic serendipity for a show at the CAyC. And it is well documented that Glusberg invited quite insistently Reichard several times to Buenos Aires, and finally she visited Buenos Aires to give 2 talks at the CAyC in November 1970. By the way, thanks to Glusberg, Reichard also met Jorge Luis Borges and organized at the ICA in London a series of 4 evenings with Borges in 1971. I also want to mention here, reflecting a little bit about the importance or the responses to cybernetic serendipity. There is a part of the exhibition Renaissance 3.0 currently showing at CAyC has a section around software, the exhibition curated by Jack Burnham, but there is an interview with Lutz Dambeck which explains how software exhibition was a response to cybernetic serendipity, but a counter response, because he didn't wanted any printouts. Everything had to be interactive. So Burnham, in this case, was interested on how the public could interact with the exhibition. So that's also interesting to consider. After Buenos Aires, as you see in the samples that I handled, the exhibition traveled to Cordoba, to Santa Fe, Tucumán, all this in Argentina, then to Montevideo and Lima, as well as other versions that traveled to Minneapolis, San Francisco, New York, London, and Tokyo. What Glusberg realized was that these formats using reproducible media were really efficient in terms of inexpensive diffusion. In 1970, he opened a proper headquarters for the CAyC with an entrance reminiscent to a techno-futuristic spaceship. It became an active player for the production and diffusion of new and innovative technological-driven art forms. He developed a series of exhibitions around systems art in Latin America. This is particularly interesting because the dismantling of cultural activities in Buenos Aires or in Argentina at that time, the human rights abuses that began with the military juntas in 1966, caused that many artists had to leave the country. And in this context, the CAyC provided an important space for artists by actively creating reflections around art and technology, communication, but mostly about society, and taking systems art as its main conceptual definition. I'm not going to go through all of the exhibitions and the artists, but I just want to point out a couple of artists that are an example of the work that was done during these exhibitions. One is Luis Fernando Benedit. Luis Fernando Benedit was an architect, a self-taught artist and designer, and was working with living habitats, installations, illustrations, and technical drawings linked to ecology and analytical research. So Benedict Biotron was an impressive environment, a sort of living habitat of 4,000 bees, encouraging the audience to learn while being active observers. Here, once more, the observer is an indissoluble part of the system. Benedict studied the behavior of bees, among other animals, to produce artificial and rational systems of organization and observation. Biotron should be understood then as a work that reflected on both cybernetics and systems theory fields, whereas the living system environment is a complex of interacting components set towards specific goals, while observation as an event produces distinctions which inform the system about a difference. Based on systems theory, the living system helped to construct a framework of diverse phenomena that are intrinsically dynamic within organisms, social systems, and ecosystems. The other artist that worked pretty much with Glusberg was Victor Grippo. Once more, he was not trained as an artist. He was a chemist, trained as a chemist, and began to work on projects that explore relations such as nature, culture, the relations between nature and culture, and real and artificial. So possibly one of his most famous works is Analogy from 1970 to 1971. There are many versions after that one, but in which an analog voltmeter measures the amount of energy contained in a system of 40 freshly grown potatoes, all interconnected in series and parallel electrical circuits. And the electrodes connecting each potato at the end of the wires are made of different metals, which reciprocally balance processes of oxidation and reduction, which produces electrical current, which is displayed in the voltmeter. So the work displays a potato. The potato, which is from a Latin American origin, in a way tries to showcase the contribution of the potato to the world as a reservoir of energy, but also to explore its symbolic value through analogies within knowledge and consciousness. And interconnecting the potatoes depicted also how the tiny voltage of each potato multiplied. Such combined energy, in a way, also becomes a metaphor for the power of collective human consciousness and its transformative potential for liberation. However, also having each potato in a small cell resembled the imprisonment and the brutality occurring in Argentina at that time. The piece was operated through a button that the public could use to read the amount of energy generated. So the works of Benedict and Grippo could be seen as pioneering experiences at the time, which today are a significant contribution to the decolonizing science and nature discussion, expanding the conception of knowledge in which cognition is thoroughly sensory and an embodied affair, reflecting the fact that our knowledge of the world is not a knowledge of something outside or beyond us, but of something in which we are always already entangled. I think this is a little bit connected to the contribution that was presented before this. So basically, I mean, this was an extensive research. We did a lot of data analysis. The CAyC published little papers, around 800 little papers, so I was able to grasp like 250 of those. So, I mean, really, CAyC did an extensive effort to pioneer the diffusion of a new art practice in Latin America based on ideas around cybernetics and systems art, which helped to legitimize, to consolidate, to make visible a Latin American network and their critical involvement in international tendencies. And even though Art and Cybernetics exhibition was a relatively static exhibition in terms of being considered, works being mostly printouts, in the systems art exhibitions, as we have shown, the works were much more interactive, which proved a concern to public participation. And in addition, the CAyC used the reproducible character of the exhibitions, as well as DIY installations that they didn't require anything to be traveling, but basically picking the things that were in a particular setting to respond to these inexpensive and easy to install exhibitions in a time where art and technology shows were known to be expensive, complex, and difficult to maintain. So its outcome is demonstrated by its extensive network and exhibitions in more than 40 countries, 40 cities. So just to conclude, as I was mentioning, I mean, even though most emblematic and larger case installations of art and technology now are possible, at that time they were quite expensive. Jack Burnham went further by decrying that after several exhibition attempts, art and technology seemed to prove mutually exclusive. So the severe maintenance costs of expensive equipment entailed operational difficulties. And in that sense, the CAyC exhibition model proved a viable way to show technological art in a moment where the technology, as I was saying, was not widely available. So it was flexible, it was efficient, and it also demonstrated how the CAyC was capable of configuring this rhizomatic Latin American network, which provided autonomy, creative liberation, and opportunities for development while fostering civic participation and collaboration, two concepts that were to become the foundation of modern computing and the internet. Thank you.